Hello, kiddies. Meet the Joker.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Joey Galvez here at the MCDC podcast, where we talk about the big two, Detective Comics and Marvel Comics. On the DC side, we've got Detective Comics 985 and Action Comics 1001. Those ones are some big ones right there. They're really cool. Hopefully we find out what's up with Karma, and then we find out what's going on with Superman, right? In our Marvel books, we leave off with Amazing Spider-Man number 2 and X-23 number 2. Those ones are really cool. Let's stay tuned and check these books out. And I hope we all have fun listening to these reviews.
Lovely ladies, I give it to you. Black lightning.
Well, girls, how do you like seeing your old man as a cool, butt-kicking crime fighter?
Sorry, Dad, but even that outfit can't make you cool.
When do we get costumes?
Not till you graduate from college.
That's so unfair!
Yeah, we're ready to be superheroes now.
You are both too young to be fighting crime.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and start with our first book, which is Detective Comics 985. This week, we've got a really cool one here. Actually, when I was reading this one, I had a little bit of a feeling that we've seen this somewhere before. And when I get into the book, we'll talk about that a little bit more. But we've seen some of these things here in the book, somewhere before. And it reminded me a whole lot of, Nolan's Batman and his trilogy, right? It was a little reminiscent of that, maybe a little bit too much, too close to it for me, but let's kind of get into this one. So we got Brian Hill as the writer on this one again. We've got Philippe Briones on this one as the artist, and Adriano Lucas again on the colors. Overall colors were great. I did like the artwork. There were some maybe points here and there that kind of got to me a little bit, but all in all, I liked it a whole lot. But again, like I said, there was too many similarities here to Christopher Nolan's Batman run, and we'll get into that a little bit here. But when we open up the book here, we see Bruce and Alfred. They're talking, right? And Bruce is looking over this dagger, and he's trying to figure out what's going on and who this guy Karma is. And he's, they're talking about how he's already sidelined, all the kids, that he's got hanging out with Black Lightning here, and he's got Cassandra and everybody just kind of sidelined, right? Anyway, so now they're talking about he's got to jog his memory because he has to find out where this guy is, where he knows this guy, because he's said his name Bruce. He's like he's said my name Bruce. I must know him from somewhere, so I got to jog my memory. What does Bruce do? He gets in a souped up car and he starts driving on these windy roads, and he says, adrenaline's going to jog my memory. And so this is what he does. And he has to live on the edge and almost kill himself to jog his memory here a little bit, because there's a couple times where we see him almost flying off the side of the road here. And anyway, so I guess it does the job, because he does get jog his memory here. And I did like how he kind of gave a callback to Ra's al Ghul, and how he said, Ra's taught me to treat memory like a museum. All you have to do is walk through the halls and find the rooms. He says, it's how he keeps 1,000 years in his mind. He said, I prefer to consider these memories like a deck of cards. You flip through them all just to find a joker. And he says the dagger, and he starts going off about how the things about the dagger, what he knows about the dagger. He's like, the dagger's gold. It's got a gold handle, hand forged. where have I seen it before? He's said, come on, detective. So he's talking to himself and thinking, come on, you're a detective. Get on this. Where have you seen it? So now it says Markovia back in years ago. So we see this guy. He's kind of like a mercenary kind of thing here. And he's got a flipped over Jeep burning. And Batman shows up. And he's talking to this guy. And he ends up just like beating this guy up. This guy's got the dagger that Bruce has in his hand, and he's looking this one over, right? And you see this guy, and they're talking about the people in Markovia need freedom. They don't need gun runners like you, the mercenaries type of thing, whatever, right? So Batman uses Scarecrow's fear toxin on this guy, and he leaves him there just freaking out. And then this is the first thing that I was like, okay, this is like Christopher Nolan's run here, because Batman pulls out this little sonar thing and he throws it next to him. He says, you're not going to be alone, because this guy's like, don't leave me alone, don't leave me alone. He's like, you're not going to be alone. My friends will be with you. And then you see a ton of bats flying out towards this guy and surrounding him. Where have we seen that before? We've seen that in the Batman movies, where Batman had that sonar thing, he dropped it, and all the bats came, and that's how he got out of that area, right? In the Christopher Nolan run. So that's where we saw. And then we also see this little, the red eyes come out of the one of the bat's eyes, and it made this guy freaked out a little bit. We've seen that in that movie as well, right? When the fear toxin kind of takes over and people's eyes are red and crazy. We saw that there, right? That's where I was like, you guys took that out of the movie a little bit too much. I don't know what you're trying to do here. So Batman, Bruce, he is, he finally figures out where he knows this guy, and he's like, I made this guy. I made him. He said, consider this karma, because that's what Batman says to him after he, douses this guy in the fear toxin, and he's like, consider this karma, and he's like, I made this guy, man, I do see that there was one really cool panel here where you see Bruce, and he gets out of his car and he's kind of walking off, and he kind of figures out, I did this, and you see in the background the bat signal, and that, I thought that was a really cool panel. That's probably one of my favorite panels of this entire area here, this entire book. And now we go back, and we're here in Bruce's penthouse, and we've got Black Lightning here. We have Barbara Gordon, Cassandra, and we've got we've got all the kids here, right? And Black Lightning's kind of talking to him here. He's like, what's going on with you? And they're just kind of complaining. They're like, we want to get this guy in the mask. And he's just kind of telling them, guys, you guys are sidelined for a reason. You're in this expensive penthouse for a reason. He wants to protect you guys. And they kind of talk him into what's going on here. Barbara here, let me read this to you, because what she says is actually kind of... And in this moment, there was little points there where it was like, kind of threw me off a little bit. I was like, okay, really? This guy... They won this guy over way too fast, because he was very reluctant on letting them go out and go against Bruce's word, right? But he was turned very quickly by these kids. Anyway, if we can call them kids, but it makes it seem like they are children in this moment. Anyway, so it says, I've been working with Cassandra way before you showed up. If she says this guy can read her mind, then I need to pull up the stoplight footage and fight to analyze Karma's gear, starting with that mask and this and that, right? So they kind of, talk him into doing this. They're like, this is that moment where, Batman says he doesn't want us to get involved, but he does want us to get involved. And he kind of was like, oh, right, really? And he's like, oh, and he kind of repeats exactly what they said. He's like, oh, okay, so I'm not saying yes, but, teach me how you guys do. And then he's like, but before he says that, teach me what you guys can do, he says, oh, this is like one of those moments where Batman says he has it under control, but he really doesn't have it under control, and I have to admit, he's going to need our help. And they're like, yep, okay. But they just basically told you that, and then you're going to I thought that was... I don't know if that was due to writing or what, but that kind of threw me off a little bit there. Then you go, and here's another moment where, you see Christopher Nolan's Batman in it, because you see Karma, and it's across town, it says, and there's a school bus driving around the corner, and somebody just, you see a bullet go through the bus driver's head, and all these kids start freaking out, and Karma steals, this bus full of kids, and he says, don't use your phones, keep your voices down because your thoughts are loud enough, because you can read their minds, right? So didn't Joker take a bus full of kids, or didn't we see somebody in those movies take a bus full of kids and this and that, whatever? We saw that in the movie, right? There's, and if it didn't happen exactly that way, but we saw them use a bus in there, right? Anyway, I thought that was very weird myself. I was like, come on, guys, you guys are really, this is, a little too close to the movie. I want to see something fresh, something new. Since you guys got this new villain coming out, come on, guys, Anyway, so we also see that Karma here, he interrupts a news reporter before she goes on air, and he takes her and he kidnaps her, right? Now we flip back and we're back at the mansion, and you see Jefferson here, Black Lightning, talking to Alfred, and he's talking, what's going on? I don't know anything about him. You know more about him than I do. Why does he want me here? He can call anybody and do anything while he's here. And, he basically says, you got superpowers. You're smart. You can do this. You can handle this. He wants you here for that reason. And kind of convinces him to get on board here, kind of a thing. And I thought, this is another a pretty cool point here, where we see Gordon's interaction with Batman here. We flip the page and we see Gordon here because he was calling him with the bat signal, and I thought that they did it really good with Gordon here. He says, it used to be you got your kid on a bus, and they were safe that day. And I thought that was kind of cool point there. And, he kind of goes on talking about these guys, He says, GP on the bus led us to the harbor. Kidnap and rescue searched it. And the television studio, there was nothing to follow, no ransom, no demands, no gimmicks. He said it's easier when they leave you riddles, cards, and coins and calling cards, kind of a thing. And he says, he kidnapped a reporter. That means he wants to send us a message. And, Gordon says, you're not responsible for what these madmen do. And Batman says, Jim, of course I am. So already we get this guy's into Batman's head, and he's already feeling like, this is his fault. He's created this guy, so this is his own fault, right? So now we are back with Karma and these kids, and he's got them somewhere, I don't know exactly where, but he's got them all sitting down, and he's like, I can hear your prayers, but one of you carry a different hope. And he grabs a kid and singles him out, and he says, you think Batman will save you? I see him dancing in your head. He says, I believe in him too. He will save you. I only need to tell him how. He said, now Gotham needs its news. So he gets this news reporter to go on camera, and she tells him exactly. He gets on camera and tells exactly what his demands are, I guess, at this point. He says, the Batman who found me can change me. It was then that I knew karma exists, that there was something that punishes those of us who deserve punishment. And then he goes on, and he talks, basically going on and on about what he wants. He says, if you want your children back, Batman's got to give me his children. And he's talking about the kids that Batman's sidelined. And he's got the Signal, Cassandra, Orphan, and Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, and he's got them all sidelined, right? So he says, I want their bodies in the center of Gotham. If you got to break them, like you broke me. If that's the only time, that's the only way you're going to get these children back, is if you bring me your children. He says, burn away your weakness, Batman, save these children. I believe in you. And he lights a, match, and he douses this he throws this match on this woman. I can only imagine he's already doused her in gasoline because she just goes in flames on live TV. And this was one of those moments I was like, Bruce is like he grabs his remote, turns off the TV, and he turns off the TV, and he's like, I should have anticipated this. I was too distracted, too comfortable. The anger I have is just a disguise, fear in disguise. He says, I'm afraid he's right. And then we see the same bats that we saw in that panel where he doused that guy in fear toxin, right? So now we are left to think that this guy is that same guy. The way he even speaks about how Batman changed him, and he wants to change Batman, and he wants him to change him by killing Batgirl and Signal and Cassandra Orphan, right? So he says you're weak, right? So that's the end of it. That's where we are with this one. I do want to say this one was actually one of those better books. I think it was better than the last. I did like it a lot. I like the dialogue. There were some hang-ups here and there, and the artwork, there was a couple of places where I thought, Batman didn't really look like he was old enough. That it didn't look like he was really this as the feature. Like when I look at Bruce and his face, I would see that he's more defined, and in my head that he's got like this more like aged, or this, I don't know how to explain it, but this I have this look, and there was a couple areas where he looked like he was maybe younger. I mean, he could have been in the same age ranges as Batgirl, Signal, and Orphan, right? But that's just me critiquing it and looking at it under a microscope, right? But all in all, this book was really good. I did like the storyline. I do like where we're going. It did keep me anticipated for what was coming up next, and I am excited to read the next book. I want to see where this is going. I want to find out who this Karma guy is and exactly his real name and all this stuff, right? So they kept me on the edge of my seat with that one. If I'm going to give this anything, I don't think I'm going to give it too high of a rating, but I'm going to give it a little bit higher than I probably would when my first reaction to this book. I think I was going to give it like a 6 or a 5, somewhere around there when I first read it. But reading it over and over again and kind of analyzing it a little bit more, I think I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. After reading a little bit more and kind of delving myself deeper into the story a little bit and giving myself some fresh eyes on this one, I think I'm going to jump it up to a 7 from a 6. I know that's a whole point, but I liked it because I kept getting in deeper and reading into the story a little bit more and figuring out how this book really ticks and how it made me feel afterwards. So that's going to be my Batman book, or my Detective Comics 985 review. I hope you guys stick around for Action Comics 1001. We're going to check that one out next. Hopefully that one's just as good, and you guys will enjoy that one too.
Newsflash, everyone knows your secret identity.
Yeah, no duh. You think I'd want to do all those things and not take credit for it? I'm not an idiot like Batman.
Oh, I wear the mask to protect my friend. Okay. Oh, my parents died.
That's insensitive. Come on,
yeah, well, at least when he saves a city, he doesn't knock down every building in the process.
Okay. That's a low blow.
Maybe the S stands for stupid.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into Action Comics 1001. For the script, we've got Brian Michael Bendis. Artwork, we got Patrick Gleason. And we've got Alejandro Sanchez on the colors. This one, guys, kind of made me feeling let down. I really wanted to see this story develop a little bit better. And Brian Michael Bendis is doing this one, and he's doing Superman. And it's just that the stories are, the stories are going pretty well together, but it just feels like it's just one book. And I don't know where they're gonna go with this one, but I hope it gets better than this. But this one was a letdown because there was a couple of things that kind of got me. There was a confusing story here a little bit. There was a feeling of Clark and Superman. They were feeling a little dim-witted to me. They didn't really. I don't know if he caught his. I don't know what's going on here with this one. Anyway, and then there was some points where the proportions seemed off to me. Maybe it's just the art style. I don't know. A lot of people really like Patrick Gleason's art style. But I mean, it looked great, but some areas it just kind of, I don't know. Maybe I'm looking into it a little too much, but I just didn't get it. There was a moment where Superman kind of looked like Sylvester Stallone. There was an area where, Superman had these slumped over shoulders, or Clark had these slumped over shoulders, but Superman had these like broad, shoulders where he was very, assertive with himself. And I don't know, maybe that's the way they're trying to make us feel like, okay, that they're kind of differentiating between Clark and Superman. So I kind of see where they're kind of getting at with this, but everybody kind of has these like slumped over shoulders. I don't know. Maybe that's just me kind of looking too much into it, but I don't know if I liked that style. So anyway, we open up the book here and we see Superman, and he's taking out these guys, and these guys were kind of comical here. There's some guys and they are dressed in all black, and they have bulletproof vests, and they have machine guns, and they're shooting at Superman. Superman's just catching the bullets. One of the guys is like, "Hey man, come on, you're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing us. Don't do that. Come on, what are you doing?" And the guy's like, "I can't stop. I just have to keep doing this." And we kind of see them kind of, be kind of like dorks and kind of dim-witted here. We get this feeling throughout the entire story here of these guys being dim-witted, some of these characters being kind of dim-witted. So now we see this, Superman obviously takes him out. There's a helicopter that these guys had. The helicopter kind of dips out, and Superman goes and gets the person in the helicopter, and he subdues them too. Now Clark Kent here is talking to Mr. White, and he's giving him the rundown of the story, and he's like, LexCorp didn't have a comment. They said that Lex Luthor was actually not in Metropolis, and obviously the cops got the easiest caller that day. And he's like, "Good job, great, nice job, Kent." He's like, "Thank you, Mr. White. Find out where Lex Luthor was," he says, and he says, "I need confirmation. What were the contents in that safe that these guys were trying to take? What were they stealing? I want to know what was inside." And this part kind of got me, like, there's people kind of talking about it. You see they're like wigs and what's going on. Find out how hard Luthor laughed when his security flunky called and told him Superman stopped his robbery in his tower. It's like, okay, all right. So now we see Trish there, and she's like, who steals, who robs in Metropolis, And the new chick, Miss Good here, she says, "Exactly, this should be the safest place on Earth." And Perry White's, he says, people still here too, Miss Good. And she says, must they, don't they know that the big boy in blue could very well show at any second? They have to know it. He's like, Superman can't be everywhere at once. And the cops show up too. What's the difference, and this and that. They kind of have this conversation going on back and forth for a little while. Now we flip the page here, and this is like some of the stuff. Obviously we have Brian Michael Bendis, and he loves his words, right? And he that felt like it was just kind of one of those throwaway scenes that didn't really have too much to do with what was going on. I don't know, except for when they talk about, Miss Good. He asked Miss Good what her story was. She's the new chick in town, and he's like, "Well, what's your story? What do you got?" And she says, a young man came into the fire station on Adams and said that Superman lit all the fires. This raises Clark Kent's eyebrows, right? And then now Superman goes and sees the chief here, and he's talking to Deputy Chief Moore. And he's like, hi, how's it going? And she's like, I don't know, she's still got this weird crush on him or whatever, but weird. He's like, hey, sorry, heard a boy came forward. What exactly did he say? She's like, well, I'm not sure sharing that with you is appropriate. Technically you are a suspect now. And he kind of gets upset here. He's like, Deputy Chief Moore, I can't have this madness going on 1 second longer. Not 1 second. And she's like, really though, Fires? He's like, I'm sorry. And she says, it seems, I don't know, small for you or whatever. I don't know what they were getting at here. He says, Metropolis is my home. People are getting hurt. Then she says, I really don't know what to do here. So they talk about her a little bit, and she says, he asked her what was going on, and she says, we were just came back from another 5-alarm blaze on 5-alarm fire on Gardner, and this kid comes up and says, and I guess we assume that they went on to talk about this because we get cut off here and we flip over to a scene here. It looks like this kid is sitting on some football bleachers. There's a football team practicing, and this kid's got some cards in his hand. He's like, yo, power level, this and that. So I don't know how old this kid is supposed to be, but he seems like he's a little bit younger. But this is the first part where it kind of got me here, the proportions a little bit here, and the facial expression. This kid looks a little bit older than he did in the last issue as well of Superman, right? Because this picks up from where that left off. So this kid, he kind of tells Superman and the chief about what had happened. He said that some guy came up to him, some bald guy came up to him, gave him $300 to say that he saw Superman light the fires. And they're like, yo, bald guy, this and that. He didn't want to kind of go in deeper into a little bit. And, this kid, this is that point where it kind of looked funny. The kid's standing there and he's kind of looking up at Superman, and he's like, Superman threatens him and he says, I can do exactly what your mom told me to do, but or you can go and work at the food bank here. This is better than juvie, right? So the kid's like, yeah, no, don't do what my mom suggested. I'll work the food bank. That's fine. I'm sorry about this, but this is that point when they're kind of standing next to each other. And the kid looks young in one panel, and then they got a side view of him. He looks like he's super older, but he's like, I don't know, it was weird. I didn't like that. But anyway, now we see Clark Kent here, and he's looking at his computer screen, and he's got all kinds of people's pictures, all the bald villains that he knows of that he's come in contact with all up on his screen. Then we see Trish here, the gossip columnist, and she's hounding him again about the whole situation between him and his wife Lois Lane. And she's like, she left you, didn't she? She left you. And she's like, yo, you're trying to, I'm sorry, but anyway, she kind of goes on and on. And she says, you're kind of avoiding me. What's going on? He's like, Trish, respectfully, I'm not getting into my personal business with you. She says, because I'm a gossip columnist, and that's beneath you. And he says, I was going to say, because we don't know each other, but yeah, sure, you gossip. And this is that moment where he's like, where the proportions kind of threw me off here a little bit, because they're standing next to each other or facing each other here. His legs are super long and his arms just look funky. And maybe it's just I don't like the look of Superman and Clark here. Clark, to me, he's a little timid and everything, but he's more sure of himself, and he's this super smart guy, and he's great with his reporting and his investigating, right? I didn't get this feel from this. I didn't get that from this. That obviously he's looking at this stuff, and he's a reporter, so he's looking into the stories and things like that. But he didn't feel like he was very sure of himself here, and I don't know. Maybe that's what they're going with. Maybe that's why they're making him look like that, because they're trying to differentiate between Clark Kent being this mild-mannered, timid guy, and Superman being very sure of himself, right? So she hounds him some more, and she tells him, "Oh, she left you, didn't she? She left you for Superman." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll see you later." And so now we see Superman flying off, and you see somebody talking about they got Superman under surveillance somehow. Somebody here, we still don't know who it is, but we see some kid or some guy in front of tons and tons of computer screens, and they're saying, "Yeah, sure, I got him, and he's up and out." And somebody else says, "You sure?" "Yeah, really sure." And then they say, "Remember like last time?" And then they say, "Yeah, Big Blue is already past Seattle and heading out to sea. I'm tracking him on Satellite 9. He's moving fast." And he says, and this person says, "Okay, Whisper, keep me posted." So we know this guy surveilling him is named, or they're calling him Whisper. He says, "Even a hint of trouble." He says, "I know what to do, sir. Send out the call. I want everyone now." He says, "All hands on deck. It's a special occasion." So they got somebody going out and checking. They're gonna send somebody out to, I don't know what they're gonna do. They're watching Superman, and they want all hands on deck here. Now we go to some mansion, here, and they say it's a special occasion. I ain't been up here since I don't know when. Did someone die? And you see this big cylinder type thing, this tube looking thing with the ladder on top, and voices are coming out from inside there. And it says, why does this have to be about something? Why are we are long overdue for a meeting. I miss you guys. Yeah, I miss standing in a dark lead pipe listening to you drone about how you almost hooked up with the Black Canary. And these people are just kind of going on and on. "Oh yeah, that really happened, blah blah blah," and they're just kind of like talking here. And we find out who this is. We flip the page and we see who this is. I got the impression that some of these people were just local shop owners, or some of them look like they're kind of gangster type looking people. Some of them there's a couple ladies who are dressed a little bit nicer, and there's a guy, almost looks like kind of like this I don't know if he's like a hipster or a street thug or what's going on, what they're trying to make him look like, because he's got a jacket on, but he's got nice hair, but he looks kind of like rough, right? And then when there's this big African American dude, and he looks pretty buffed out and pretty big, right? And he's got this big thick neck. And they talk about how he says, "Yeah, you agreed that my kids got to eat. I have overhead." So that's where I was like, okay, is he like some kind of shop owner if he's saying he's got overhead here, right? And he says, I don't watch the news, and he calls this guy Lettuce. He says, "I got bank to make." And this guy calls him, "Well, Yogurt, maybe you should." And then he says, but by making Superman a suspect, I flipped the entire," and then he gets cut off. So they're talking about this guy's like, who did the fires, who made the fires, and they were like, first they were kind of denying that they did the fires, right? And he says, "Well, what's the question?" He says, but it's I told you guys to distract, the fires were to distract Big Blue, but only in case of emergencies. And he says, so how many fires were you guys making? And there's like, oh yeah, that's the question you need to ask. So that's where they were going with this kind of thing. Anyway, he says, they kind of talk a little bit more, and then all of a sudden this big red cloud of I don't know what it is engulfs the place inside there, and they're inside this lead tube thing talking so that Superman doesn't hear or see them. And this guy kind of says, Superman, it says, "Don't say his name, he can hear," just some kind of thing. "Oh, there, relax, you can't hear us." But anyway, this red cloud engulfs this guy, right? And it takes him out, and it kind of kills him, I guess. And they said, "Oh, meet who I'm going to refer to as Red Cloud," they say. And it takes a form of a woman. And she says, "You're all seeing it. 100% discretion. The way I have been made to understand it, the organization is only as strong as its weakest and loudest link. So don't be that." So I guess he says, "Well done, Cloud. So the rest of you meet the newest member of the family. You'll know her as Red Cloud. So this is the newest member of their family. We don't know exactly who they are yet or what they're doing here. All we know is that they are against Superman, and they have been setting him up with these fires. This Red Cloud is got powers somehow, and they can turn themselves into a red cloud of gas of some sort. And they're the big bad in this. They are the big bad. Excuse me, I'm stumbling over my words. They're the big bad here in this story, in this moment here, taking kind of a hierarchy, taking the top tier of this hierarchy here, right, just under the boss. And so they're like, all right, under the, so they're like, we did all this under his his smug alien nose, right? And he doesn't even know that we exist. So we see them here, and I guess they're the ones behind all this stuff. So they've got some kind of grand plan of what they're going to do here. And so they've been kind of working, under his nose and doing this stuff and kind of throwing him off of their trail. So the fires are some kind of distraction of something bigger, what they're going to do. I don't know what's going on. So hopefully we will find out what that's about. Then this very last page, we see somebody here in a high-rise, and they're tapping away at their computer. And I have this on my tablet, and I had to zoom in on one of these panels here because they're just tapping away, and it says that's the end. It says secrets with secrets next on the next one, 1002. But I zoomed in on the paper that they have here in one of these panels, and let me read these to you. And it says, and it's some like somebody was taking notes, and it says the secrets of Lois Lane, and the next one says my secrets. It says the power of the truth, and those two are crossed out. And the next one under that, it says the truth, justice, and the Kryptonian way. And then another one says married an alien from outer space. And then I can't really read the last one there. So we see, I don't know what this person is saying, but they have some kind of secrets or what's going on. I don't know if this is Trish or what. So it could very well be her, and she's writing about this stuff, but it kind of, from reading that, it almost seems like they have a little bit more information than what they should. So I guess hopefully we'll find out in the next one. Some of this story kind of got me a little confused, and it was like, out of nowhere, I don't know where they were coming with this. There wasn't very much story here, except for towards the end of the book here. There was just maybe 2 or 3 pages there that actually had the story that I wanted, but I had to read all those other pages and throughout all of that first to get here. I guess I understood the development of the story, how they had to go talk to this young man and get some of this information out of him to find out that some bald guy was paying him $300 to say that Superman lit the fires. So I guess he cleared his name there a little bit, but we'll see what goes on with this one. Everybody says that Brian Michael Bendis writes for the trade. This one kind of felt like that. So this one, just because I had problems with it. I mean, the artwork was great. There were some areas where I just had some problems with the artwork, but all in all, I did like it a lot. This one, I'm probably going to give a 5 out of 10. Yeah, this one was not that great for me. Some people out there probably would love this. That's awesome, wonderful. I hope you guys enjoy it. I am definitely going to stay on this one and check out, see where the next one comes up, or where they're going to do with that one. So, for Action Comics 1001, this is going to be my review. Alright guys, it's time for our Marvel books. We've got Spider-Man number 2 here for you guys, and next we'll have X-23.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood.
Dr. Connors, what have you done? Let's talk this out, Spider to Lizard.
Lizard Man. Boy, would I like to tackle a character like that.
All right, are you guys ready for Amazing Spider-Man number 2, Back to Basics Part 2? This one was actually really good, guys. I enjoyed it, and it was a really good story. It kept me intrigued and interested, and I was actually, and there was a really cool cliffhanger, and I was like, whoa, I want more. So this one's, it was very reminiscent of the animated series, and I like that, right? Because they are going back to the basics, and I enjoy this. When they were doing all those crazy stuff where Dr. Otto Octavius was, he controlled Spider-Man's body. I wanted to read it, but I couldn't get into it, and I didn't really read that one. So this one's back. He's back in his own body, and he's back to basics. He's back to being Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and he's in his own body this time. So now we kind of open up here, and we see somebody poaching some elephants, and you know, Spider-Man is kind of talking. He's like, the world could be a tough place. One day you're just minding your own business, going your own way, and then suddenly everything falls apart, and then we see this. I'm wondering where this is going to go with this kind of stuff. I wonder if they're just kind of showing us that there's always some kind of poacher trying to get at you. And then we flip to the page here, and then we see Spider-Man. He's fighting a couple of, I guess he calls them D-list villains here. And I guess he says, I can't really remember what their names were, but that's exactly what it is. They were not memorable people. They were actually robbing a book sale here. Like, it was like kind of like a swap meet for like books. So it was really weird. But this page here, me and my wife we're documentary buffs here. We love to watch documentaries, and there's this new one out called The Bleeding Edge, and it's about medical devices and things like that. Well, this one here, it looks like this guy is wrapping up Spider-Man in an Essure device. It's that little metal thing that women use as a contraceptive, I guess. So anyway, that's what it looks like. Me and my wife thought that was kind of funny, and that he was using this. So I don't know if you guys want to check out that documentary. It's really good. Check it out. It tells the truth a whole lot. I guess that's a little plug for that. Whatever. Me and my wife have a show where we talk about we're going to be talking about a lot of documentaries and things like that. I'll let you guys know when we have the next one up, and you guys can check that out. But anyway, we're talking about comic books here, right? So he's got them wrapped up in this metal, kind of like a metal wire, or like a spring type stuff. And I guess that's this guy's power or whatever. There's another guy who's like pretty huge and buff or whatever, and he's like, they're like talking about like taking books from people, and there's some really good, I guess, really it's just weird to me that they're taking books from people, and there's some really antique type stuff at this place. So anyway, Superman, takes these guys out, wraps them up in his webbing, and then he buys some books from the bookseller, and he gives the books that these guys were trying to steal to the robbers. And he's like, where you guys are going, you guys are probably going to need this. You guys are going to have a lot of time to read the books. Here you go. That's it. Now we wake up, and he's with MJ, and he's pretty happy because he's like, even though all this crazy stuff is happening to him, he lost his job, he lost his stature at the Daily Bugle and things like that. He's no longer working there, and he was, he's got this label of a plagiarist, right? He's been accused of plagiarism. So anyway, but he's still happy. He says, "I'm so happy because his life is going pretty well with his girlfriend here or whatever, right? With MJ, and everything's going really good. So that's doing pretty well here. So now we and I do like this. Every time that I read Spider-Man books, I love how they give us a little bit of a background of what's going on, and then they give us a little bit of this little feeling of where he is, and then he's like, but that's not what's going on right now. That's just, you get kind of like he's thinking about this stuff, and you go into his memory, go into his mind a little bit. So I love how they do this. If anybody's trying to, if any other books do this, I think at least this one, they executed it very well. I know that there's other books that try to do that, and you just kind of get lost in the translation a little bit, or lost in the whole way that they try to do that. This one I didn't get lost. So now we are back at Empire University here, and he sees, the lizard man, Dr. Connors here in his lizard form, and they call it the lizard. But anyway, so, Pete is freaking out, and he's like yelling at everybody. He's like, okay, everybody, don't panic. Experienced super villain here. He's about to attack everybody. Everybody exit, get out, leave. No, and then the lizard says, my apologies, class. This is one of my former TAs, Peter Parker. And he's like, wait, why are you introducing me? Why is nobody getting eaten? What's going on? So the lady who was escorting him into the classroom, she's like, Professor Connors, here he's not a threat anymore. He's an esteemed member of our faculty. He's like, yeah, faculty of evil. And then you see Dr. Connors kind of transforming from his lizard form to his human form. So you're like, wait, whoa, this is weird. So he tells, Peter Parker here, he's like, I got this inhibitor in the back of my neck that helps me to control that side of me. And he's like, yeah, I've heard that before. You've done that and it never really worked out for you, right? He's like, well, this time we do this in class here. That's why we're here. This is my class. We got all the resources we can. The lady goes on and tells Peter Parker that, as a part of his, reform, because he's a villain and he's been in jail, this and that. So a part of his whole probationary period, or his parole period, or whatever you want to call it, there is he donated all of his patents that he had in his name to the university, and it was more than what they needed. I guess fund-wise, because it gave them lots and lots of money. So in order for them to repay Dr. Connors, they gave him a stature they gave him the job of being a professor and teaching here. And he's like, this is what I wanted. So anyway, they created this thing that sits on the back of his neck, and it controls his urge to hurt any kind of human, and it stops him in his steps, and it doesn't. He's no harm to anybody, right? So now he's talking to Peter Parker. He's like, yeah, here, join the class. This is what's going on. Then we see Taskmaster and the Black Ant here, and they were posing as janitors, and they transform back into their real form. And we flip the page again, and we see, he's like. Dr. Connors tells the class, hey, go ahead and continue into your books. Me and Peter Parker need to have a conversation. So he goes and talks to Peter Parker, and he tells him, this is what's going on. I've been working on this stuff. It's brilliant. This is what me and you have talked about in the past, where, we just do this for science's sake. This is what we want to do. This is where we're at. We have no... because in the past we had to do things by the book, and we had to do it by how they wanted, how the companies wanted it, and things like that. Here we're doing it at the university, and they got regulations and all this stuff, but they are let me just read this to you. He said, this is an accelerated program for the best young minds in the country, just like you. We're like you were doing in Peter at Parker Industries, except here the university's concerns aside, we get to do it just for the pure joy of discovery. So they just get to do this stuff for the discovery of science and just for science's sake, he says. He says, and that's why I really want you here, because underneath all that perpetually running late and weird talking to yourself, there's a brilliant mind in there, and I would hate for you to waste that. He says, so before you make a decision, there's something I need you to look at. And he brings in the isotope genome accelerator. That's that is what changed Peter Parker. That is what created that spider, that radioactive spider that bit Peter Parker, right? And now it's here in the hands of Dr. Connor and the university. And obviously he asks him, well, why is that here? I know a lot about this, but why is it here? He's like, we're doing some research. And he says, well, as you know, the accelerator is often used to transmute characteristics of one genome onto another. He says, believe me, I know. He says, so what we're trying to do is reverse engineer the effect. So if we isolate and divide the hybrid properties, he says, you mean like a lizard and a human? He says, precisely, which is why I was in my other form when you came in, diagnostic tests. So this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to reverse engineer it so that they can, I guess he can just be a human and be in his human form, which I'm sure this is later on going to play out a little bit differently for Peter Parker, Spider-Man. I don't know if he's going to want to not be Spider-Man anymore and he's going to use this on him, or what's going to happen, because there's many different possibilities that can play out with this, right? So now we get interrupted, and Taskmaster and the Black Ant burst in, right? And Peter Parker says, there's no windows, there's no doors, there's no closets, I can't even change into Spider-Man. Then he says to himself that I wish that there was some kind of super-powered person in the room who could fight them off. And then at that precise moment, you see Dr. Connors change back into his lizard form. And but then this is when his little inhibitor on the back of his neck, it actually works here. He can't move because, you know, he says, seriously, the one time that I've got the lizard under control, the trick actually works. So now his little inhibitors helping him, and it actually works because I guess in the past he's had these different, you know, these different schemes to stop his transformation and help him be good or whatever, and they didn't work. But this is the one time that it works. So now Peter Parker gets this, this bright idea to make Taskmaster and the Black Ant mad so that he can throw them into the chemicals that are over there on the table behind him. So he does. He kind of gives them some little quips behind here, back and forth. There's a little Wolverine reference because he says, you know, is that your face or is that just a mask? And he says, ooh, you know, Black Ant says, you know, don't see that he's a little sensitive about that, you know, that's a sensitive subject. He says, so who made that? I heard that somebody who was it? So who was it? Just curious, which superhero ripped off your face skin? And was it Wolverine? He says, I bet it was Wolverine. So he gets upset. He throws him into the chemicals, and you know, Peter Parker mixes up them chemicals and he creates a big, huge green fog. Out of this green fog, Spider-Man jumps out. So he has enough coverage, enough time to change into Spider-Man. And he does, and he starts taking these guys out. And all throughout the entire time, he's got these quips just making fun of these guys back and forth, right? So that's what Spider-Man does. That's who Spider-Man is. And now, and there's one point where Black Ant says, oh no, the quipping, it burns and stuff. So it's kind of funny here that we get this little bit of a joke here back and forth, right? And then he smashes their faces into each other. He says, oh, I thought you guys were so close, you know, kind of a thing. You look pretty close. So there's just some funny quips back and forth, right? So now, and here is one of the big things that here comes the cliffhanger here. Because we see, you know, he says, and that class is what happens if you don't pay your student loans. Let that be a lesson to you all. And then, you know, the Lizard Man, he says, you know, thanks, Spider-Man. It's great to see you, but how did you get here? How did you even get in here? And then he just kind of says, you know, proportional teleportation abilities of a spider. Come on, I thought you were a scientist, Doc. You're supposed to know this stuff. He says, but I guess I'll be getting along since it looks like everyone is okay. So now Spider-Man turns around and grabs somebody from off the floor, and he says, well, almost everybody's okay. Hey, pal, let me give you a hand. And he says, hey, wait a sec. I know you. You're Peter Parker. And then Peter Parker, you see his face grabbing a hold of Spider-Man. He says, and you're Spider-Man. And it says, to be continued. Now we've got Peter Parker and Spider-Man in the same room together, grasping each other's hands. What's going on here? What happened, guys? Because we saw Peter Parker get thrown into that table and all those chemicals, and he mixed up some chemicals. And then that big old cloud of green smoke engulfed the whole entire room. And then out jumps Spider-Man. But now we see both Spider-Man and Peter Parker in the same room, and it says to be continued. What's going to happen? What does this mean? What happened here? I need some explanations. Now we flip to the last page here. Well, with the solicit here, and it says next in issue 3. and you see Spider-Man grasping Peter Parker's shirt, and they look like they're pretty upset at each other, and we don't know what's going to happen here, and that's the end of the story. Now that's where that cliffhanger there got me, pulled me in. If the rest of the story wasn't pulling me in, this last page pulled me in, because that's what I got excited about. I said, ooh, what's going on here? What is this about? You know, we are back to the old school type of Spider-Man stories. So I really loved this book. This one it could possibly be one of my highest scores on this show, this episode here today. You know, I did like this one a whole lot. There was hardly any missteps for me, at least. I'm sure that there's people out there that would point some out. But, you know, maybe I'm a little bit of a fanboy on this book, and I'm just giving into that and not giving a really good rating here. But, you know, I think I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10, because I like the story. I like that cliffhanger. I liked the whole book altogether. You know, maybe there were some of those D-list and C-list, you know, villains here and there, but, you know, it was a really good story all in all. I do want to see where this one develops and where this one goes. So let's go ahead and move on to our next one. That's going to be Amazing Spider-Man number 2, Back to Basics Part 2. I'm ready for number 3. Let's see what happens in the next coming weeks here with that one. Next, we're going to have X-23 number 2. We're going to find out what happens with those 5 sisters, and there was 2 of them that looked like they were almost zombies, and we'll find out what happens with them in this next review, guys. All right, we'll see you guys here in a second.
No, X-23. This isn't the time.
What? What have you done?
I've merely ensured your legacy, Wolverine.
All right, let's go ahead and get into X-23 number 2 here. So this one was actually really good. I liked it a whole lot. This one was probably, I thought I was going to have a really high rating on Amazing Spider-Man number 2, but this one, guys, here is actually probably a even higher rating than the last book that I read for you guys, right? Because this one was actually so good that I am excited about this book. The pacing was really great. It was really quick paced, and it gave me a whole lot of information and characterization and things like that. It was really awesome. I really liked it a whole lot. So we pick up where we left off in the first book here, where we've got Honey Badger and X-23. They're still trying to, you know, seek out what's going on with that missing scientist, and we know that the 5 sisters, who the Cuckoos, have taken her, right? One of them, 2 of them are kind of like dead, decaying, almost zombie-like, and one of them killed the other one. So now we kind of see that. That's why they call this one 2 birthdays and 3 funerals, and this is part 2, right? So we still have Honey Badger. She really wants to have a birthday. X-23 knows her birthday or day of birth, but she really doesn't see it that way because she was created, right? So she says, you know, it's just the day that I was created. It's not really a birthday. So Honey Badger is still on this. She really, really wants a birthday, and she's, you know, this is what we see here throughout this entire run here. But we open up the page here, we see kind of like a funeral, and they kind of have this talk about, you know, Sophie Cuckoo and this kind of stuff. Anyway, I guess that's a little bit of a memory here. We see that, right? But we see the Cuckoos here. They come running out of their rooms all at the same time. They say, something's wrong, hurry up. And they go to this abandoned church that they have these 2 decaying sisters, and one of them's dead, and they see, right? So now, you know, they feel like, you know, we're separated, we're you know, anyway, because they have this connection. So now we see, you know, Honey Badger jumps on X-23, and they have a little breakfast, and they're talking about, she wants them to have a birthday, and she's like, well, we can have a birthday next week. What if we had our birthday on the same day that a celebrity had theirs, and this and that? So she's a very teenager, right? Because if my daughter really wanted, and I've got a teenage daughter, if she really wanted to pick a day where she had her birthday, I'm sure she would pick a celebrity's birthday to have it on and have a big, huge party, just like we see here. So now, you know, they kind of talk and go on and on about this stuff. She's like, yeah, I don't have a reason to celebrate the day that I was made. It's just, you know, anyway. So she's like, it's just a day. So Honey Badger is you know, practicing her nunchucks, and X-23 says, you know, I'm going to go out. I'm going to check out I got this lead from Hank. It's just a scientist. It's probably nothing. I'm going to go check it out. You got to stay here and practice your nunchucks. And I thought it was kind of funny here. I actually laughed out loud on one of these panels here because she shuts the door, and the little girl says, you know, birthday discussion is not over. Oh, and I broke a lamp with my nunchucks. And she's like, clean it up. She's like, yeah, that's not what Wolverines do. So I thought that was kind of funny. You know, that's this character. She's really, really funny, and I love her little quips. So now we see these sisters, the three sisters that are alive, and they're talking about the plan, and they go and grab stuff, and it looks like they're packing up, and they're about to leave the mansion, I guess, because that's what we see. They're like, oh, we gotta leave, this is our home, what's gonna happen? And one of them looks very reluctant, and she's kind of been reluctant throughout the entire thing, right? So I don't know if that's gonna give us a little bit of if she's gonna help X-23 and Honey Badger out with this later on to defeat the sisters, or what's gonna happen anyway. So we flip back, and we flip the next page, and we see X-23 sniffed out this laboratory. It's called Genie or something like that, and this guy is waiting there for her, and he says, you know, oh, hey, how's it going, X-23? Thank you for coming. You know, Hank emailed us, and he told us that you were going to be here and checking this out. So she's asking him about the missing scientist. And you know, how long has she been missing? He says, you know, we're not sure. She's always away, a little in and a little out, this and that. Well, he said the smart ones always are. So maybe a few days or a week, I'm not sure. And she says, did she have a lab or a workstation? He says, yeah, down the hall in room 143. Her laptop is encrypted, so obviously, in case you wanted to jump on there or whatever, she said, yeah, encrypted, right? So, anyway. So, you know, so she goes to her lab, her area, her office, and she gets into her computer there, and she sees that this scientist had a tracker, a step tracker and heart monitor, whatever, those kind of like a Fitbit thing, right? And she says, oh, you were tracking your steps? So that's going to be really easy to find this lady, right? Because if she's got it on her, then you can jump onto the computer or whatever she connected it to. You can find out where she is. So that's what X-23 does here. She jumps on the computer, finds her location, and she's like, gotcha, there you are. And then we flip the page here, and we see X-23 found where she is, and she's in an old abandoned church on the edge of the city, and she's like, oh yeah, you're in an old abandoned church on the edge of the city, oh hooray, hooray. It's always like that, right? And we get this little inner monologue. She's like, one benefit to being a mutant superhero, you don't spend a lot of times in churches where you generally know, you know. So she's kind of looking around, she puts her gloves on, and she's like, oh, something's not right. Dr. Marks was definitely here. She sees some remnants of the where the scientist could be, and then you see, you know, she says something's wrong. There's death here. She smells death, and she hears a noise behind her, and she pulls out her claws, and you see a word bubble off to the side. It says, "What gives?" And she says, "What are you doing here?" And it's Honey Badger, right? She's like, "Well, you texted me, duh. Cool church. What's up?" She says, "I didn't text you." And then you see more word bubbles off panel here, and it's three word bubbles simultaneously saying it at the same time. It says, "Thank you for coming." All simultaneous. It's the three sisters, the three cuckoo sisters. It says, we could say something here about not having a choice, but we all make choices. We choose to protect the four and no one else. She says, whatever you have planned, and then they kind of interrupt her, says, the plan is already in motion. And then their eyes start to glow red, and then everything else glows red. And she says, Laura, and this is probably one of my favorite panels here. When everything turns red, you see the sisters kind of like, there's tons of them, and it's almost like this mirrored image type thing, because they're all there, and she's like, you know, I fought them before, I fought death before, I fought these cuckoos, so if I'm fighting these cuckoos, that means that this is really not happening, this is not real. And she says, you know, Gabby, it's not real, shut them out. But she falls to the floor after she shuts them out, and she screams for Gabby, right? But this is really cool. This panel was one of my favorites. So it's all red, and you got some red and black, red and white, and you got some words saying, you know, guilt, pain, doubt, sadness, grief, fear, despair, all this kind of stuff. And I guess that's all running through her head. And you see X-23, she's kind of, you know, going through all these motions, going through all these feelings, right, of all this type of stuff, and they're all kind of like written around her. And I thought this was one of the coolest panels here, one of the coolest pages here, and it was really awesome. I loved it. I think I even jumped up my score a little bit just because of this page, because I sat back and I looked at it for a little while, and I was like, wow, that's one of my favorite pages in this book. I really hope that they continue this way with the book, with the story. I am very excited about this book. This week, I guess, guys, my picks are probably going to be my Marvel books this week. I love DC, but these Marvel books, especially these two Marvel books, are really great this week. So now she's on the floor, and she's grabbing her head, and she's calling for Gabby, and she looks like she got hit a couple times because she's rubbing the back of her head. And then you see this really cool panel where her head is in the same position, and you see Gabby's head is in the same position, but she's got tape over her mouth, and Gabby is actually in the back of a van that kind of speeds off, and she turns, and X-23 turns and screams for Gabby this time. And I guess the cuckoos took Gabby. So this is what's going on here. And this is where we are left off. To be continued. This book was very, very fast paced. They did give us a little bit of a time to kind of just ease into it a little bit, and I loved it. I love the way this was paced. This is the way I wish I had all my books paced for me, guys. And this story is very intriguing, and it keeps me interested. I really want to see where this one goes. I'm excited for this book. If I'm going to pick any book this week, guys, X-23 number 2 is going to be my pick of the week out of all these books that I've reviewed this week. So this one, pick this one up, buy it, throw it into your collection, number 1 and number 2. They're doing really good with this one. I'm sorry I didn't give you guys the writers and all that stuff in the beginning, but here it is. We got Mariko Tamaki on this one as the writer, Juan Cabal on this one, and we got Nolan Woodard as the colorist. So they are doing good. This team, they're doing really good. I liked it a whole lot, guys. This was really, really amazing. So my score for this one, I'm probably going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I'm excited for this one. I'm excited to see where X-23 is going to go. I want to see what they're going to do with these formerly known as 5 sisters. Now there's 3 or 4, one's dead or undead or coming back to life. Who knows what's going on with that and what's going to happen with Honey Badger here, because in the next panel here, the next page here, we got the solicit for the next one, and there's no words to it. It just says next, and it has Honey Badger tied up, and you see X-23's kind of silhouette in the background. And we'll see what happens next. I'm so excited for this one, guys. So that is going to be my review for X-23 number 2, part 2 of 2 birthdays and 3 funerals. So.
Please, can you help me?
Where's Batman?
Expletive.
There's something evil inside of me.
You're scared. I get it. But you can control it.
All right, guys, San Diego Comic-Con has come and gone, and we had some really big stuff happen throughout that entire weekend, right? So first of all, obviously, you guys just heard a little bit of a tidbit of the Titans trailer, and everybody was talking about that moment where Robin said F Batman, right? Some of us liked it, some of us didn't. Me and the guys on the last episode talked a little bit about it. Well, we talked a little bit amongst ourselves about it. I said, you know what? I might take a look at it, check this show out, see what it is. But a lot of people all over the place are like, that is not Robin. That's not what he would do. Not even after he had that animosity towards Batman and Bruce Wayne and all that stuff. But guess what? Me, sometimes when I was a teenager and I was mad at my parents, I definitely would cuss them out. So I think, I mean, it might be a little bit closer to that relationship if he was mad and upset at his foster dad or whatever Bruce Wayne was. You know what I mean? I think that would probably be a little closer to that. But that, I think a lot of people out there were saying, they're trying a little too hard to be edgy. And that might be true. It did look like it was a little too edgy. There was a lot of blood and gore, and it does seem like it's a little bit darker of a TV show. So that's going to be coming out on DC's their little streaming channel, right? So they're going to be launching that very soon, and they're going to be launching those shows. So we're going to stick around and see what's up with that. I'm sure there's going to be a ton more coming out about that show. So, and then I don't know if you guys heard. Here's another one. I did read that Tom King went to San Diego Comic-Con with a bodyguard. People say that that his agent and people like that the con themselves gave him the bodyguard. But come on, really? I don't know. He says that it was because of the whole the whole backlash of the Batman Catwoman wedding, and he received death threats and things of that nature. I thought that was a little weird that he showed up to the con with a bodyguard. And there was people in the past who went to the con who had death threats, and they didn't give them a bodyguard. But all of a sudden, Tom King needed a bodyguard, and I don't know. I think that, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I don't know. I don't want to sit here and say he cried about it, or somebody cried and said, I need it, but whatever. There are some divas out there who would probably do that, right? And we've got some other news here as well. Obviously, some of this stuff is a little old now because I'm talking about it a little bit after the fact that it happened. But I'm going to talk about it anyway because it's buzzworthy, I guess you want to say. James Gunn has been fired and because of some topics that he's tweeted out in the past about rape and pedophilia, and especially, and that's so horrible, especially now that we got all this crazy stuff going on about this whole pedosexual craziness that's going on. I do not. I'm not even going to get into that because I'm just going to say I do not believe that's any topic that I'm so flustered that I can't even talk about it because that's so horrible. I definitely need to move on from this because I'm going to get really heated. I have a very, very strong standpoint on what that is and how horrible that situation is. I definitely do not condone anything of that nature, and I'm frankly disgusted by it. But I'm also disgusted that there's people out there who is still sticking up for this guy. And even if it's a joke, you should never joke about anything of that nature. But still, that's just my opinion. I've got another show where I get heated and me and my wife talk about stuff of that nature. And, this is not the forum for it. But anyway, there's people sticking up for him. Even people like Dave Bautista, who's actually gone out and come out and said that what happened to him was not fair. But you know what? Who says life's fair these days, right? So anyway, that's going to be our comic book pop culture news. All right, guys, I appreciate you guys listening, and I thank you for all of you've done for me and my show. This is going to be another episode of MCDC Podcast. This is Joey Galvez, and we'll see you guys later.
That's right.